Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the ASMR Review Show. For this video, we're going to be talking about the new Avengers movie, Infinity War. This is the culmination of 10 years worth of world building through the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it's finally time for the big culmination and final battle to happen. So, for this video, I will be talking about spoilers eventually. For now, I'll give a few spoiler-free thoughts, but I don't want to censor myself too much as usual, and we'd like to get into the more interesting discussion points. So, spoiler-free for now, as usual. This movie is very enjoyable, it's very entertaining, it's well directed, well shot, well acted, and really I think the writing is the strongest point, because it's always a very difficult task to build up characters over many different films and then have them interact with each other and make that interaction feel genuine and natural. And many of the sequences in this film do a great job of that. There's a lot of nice callbacks to character moments in certain characters' individual films that eventually pay off here, but with an alternate interaction. I won't say what those are, but when you see the film, you'll certainly catch a few of them. And I do think that this was worth the wait overall. And I'm kind of hard-pressed to find any, obvious glaring flaw with it. Obviously it's not perfect, and none of these movies are, but for just a pure thrill ride of entertainment, you'd be hard-pressed to find better in this day and age, so that is quite an achievement. So, story-wise, without giving too much away, the basic plot is that Thanos, who's the big super bad guy we've been teased about since the first Avengers movie, he's finally in the spotlight. It's his time to shine, and he wants to find all of the Infinity Stones, which are these magical MacGuffin rocks, each with a unique power that they've been slowly established throughout the other films, and so now he's finally come to take them, because once he has all six, he can complete his master plan of evil and death and destruction. But I won't go too much into his motives and stuff. I think you'll be best left to realize that as you watch the film. Needless to say, I do like him as a villain. He's got an interesting sort of logic behind his plan, and I like that. It's a little bit more so than just I'm evil and I want to cause death because I hate light and I'm dark, which is something that's been lacking in some of the villains in the Marvel Universe lately. So I do like that they went a little extra step with him as a character, and he was probably one of the more interesting parts about the film. I don't want to say too much about him, because I feel the less you know going in about Thanos, the better, as you can sort of be taken along for the ride with the experience. But needless to say, he was very well done. I'm very glad, because for someone that just seemed like they sat around on their throne for 6 years, it would really hope that it would be worth the wait, and I definitely think that it was, so that was very good. I think another really good part about the film, as I mentioned, were the character interactions, and it is a little unfortunate that you don't get a moment with every single character all at once. They're sort of all split up, which I think was done to maintain the ease of communication and clarity. And the interactions, the way they've picked these characters, does do a very good job of leading to some interesting scenarios and conversations. such as one pairing would be Iron Man with Doctor Strange. It's really good because they're both very, like, sort of, tech savvy or very smart intellectual people. And the way that they sort of go back and forth with each other was very great. So that interaction works very well. Another one that you saw a bit of in the trailer was Thor and the Guardians of the Galaxy. That one was great. A lot of really good moments there. A lot of comedy, but also a really good dramatic moment too, which I'll go into more detail on that. Overall, I think it's very well done. I don't know how I would rank it with other Marvel films. I'm actually in the process of doing a marathon through all of them again. I was hoping to do it before I saw Infinity War, but it is quite a long marathon, of course. So once I do that, maybe I'll have a better view of it. I guess one criticism I could say is that it's not really like a standalone movie. It really is like, a part in a series, which that's okay. It's just, I wouldn't go into this thinking you can understand it without having seen a few of the other ones, particularly Thor Ragnarok. That's one of the most important ones to have seen because this film picks up right where that one ended, with the post-credit scene for that one. Good thing is I don't think you really had to see Black Panther to understand this one, which is good because I actually, at the time of this, haven't, because it was still in theaters, and I'm sure Black Panther is a good movie. Everyone said great things about it, but it wasn't one that I wanted to like go to pay to see in theaters. I thought, okay, I can wait for that one a bit, like some of the other ones. But this is definitely a really good one. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can say while keeping it vague enough. I really liked the way it ended. It had a very, very good ending. I won't talk about it. That's something to be spoilers. Though I will say, if you for some reason haven't seen the film yet, you've probably already gotten it accidentally spoiled for you. So there's this great thing I've seen online, which is like Infinity War spoilers without context. And having seen the movie, they are pretty accurate and pretty hilarious, but I won't say what any of them are. So I think that's about all I want to say for the spoiler section. I mean, overall, yes, it is one of the better Marvel movies. It was definitely worth waiting for. Can't wait to see what they do next with the universe. Thanos is a really great villain, one we've definitely been waiting for, and one who was worth the wait. I mean, this review's coming out pretty late after the film came out, so I'm sure you've seen it already. Hopefully. But in any case, let's get down to the spoilers and the interesting points of discussion. So, this is your last warning. If you don't want to get spoiled, you should go now. Go see the movie. And then you can come back here later and hear all the rambling and the thoughts about it. Or you can just go to sleep now, whatever you prefer. So, spoilers are coming in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Are they gone? I think they are. Okay. So, the big spoiler at the ending is that Thanos wins. He gets all of the stones for his Infinity Gauntlet and snaps his fingers to wipe out half the universe in a pretty devastating sequence. And just the note that the film ended on, it was sort of like this feeling of, what do we do now? What happens? And I really like that. think what I'll do is, for the purposes of clarity, is we'll get to the ending in a bit, but I'll try to go through chronologically, just to sort of keep the thoughts relatively organized. So, at the start of the film opens exactly where Thor Ragnarok ended, with the Asgardian ship getting attacked by Thanos. And it is a little sad that all the build-up from Thor Ragnarok is kind of over, because the whole point was about saving the people. We had all these new characters like Valkyrie, Korg, Meek, who's not dead. He's not dead yet. Heimdall and Hulk and Loki and Thor, they were all together. And then the film starts and they're probably all dead. Or if they're not dead, we haven't seen them yet. So we don't really know exactly. But I'm okay with this because it was already hinted at in the post-credits scene and that's what was going to be happening. And I like that Thor, feeling like he failed his people, is used for his character arc and his journey throughout the film. See, it's kind of a thing I know where if the film doesn't connect with the next one in a series, or stuff is set up and then it just starts from somewhere else, that it can be a little annoying. I think one example, not the highest bar for filmmaking standards, but is the Resident Evil movies. Particularly in the last few, they all ended with a certain cliffhanger or on a certain beat or note, and then the next one would always start like years later, completely detached from that ending. And it was almost as if that ending never happened, and it wasn't really used for any purpose. So, spoilers for the Resident Evil movies. Like how the one ends with they're all on a boat and there's about to be a big battle, and then the next one just starts with the battle's over and she's captured, and a lot of the characters just never show up again. Or how whichever one it was, the fifth or the sixth one, I lost track, ended with there going to be a big battle at the White House, and Alice had all of her powers, and now the next one starts with that battle ended with everyone dying, and Alice didn't actually have her powers, and we thought Wesker was a good guy, but he's actually still a secret asshole. And yeah, it's very disjointed. But in this case, I liked it because this was all used for a good dramatic story with Thor's character. Throughout the film, you see him trying to struggle with the fact that he's lost his father, his mother, his evil sister. Loki dies, maybe, and he's lost his people, his best friend Heimdall, and he feels like he has nothing. And that was a great scene where he talked with Rocket. We'll get to that in a bit. But so I'm okay with it starting off on this note. It definitely really tells you that this movie is not messing around with how kind of dark it can get. So right off the bat, Hulk fights Thanos and loses, and then for the rest of the movie Hulk never wants to come back, and I think that's because he just sort of can't stand the rejection of the fact that he lost a fight so obviously. And it is kind of a bit of a story-writing perspective to probably nerf the Hulk since he is so powerful, but at the same time it did make context within the story. That is something that I could see Hulk doing, particularly in Thor Ragnarok. He's like an angry child, and if he sees a big monster he just wants to fight it, like when he just randomly decided to go fight Satan in Thor Ragnarok. So, you know, I know he's called Surtur, but I'm just gonna call him Satan because that's what he is. So I liked that touch. That was nice. And then Loki, that was a good moment for him, that he, as much of a mischievous devil he is, he still can't just have Thanos murder Thor in cold blood, and so he gives him the Tesseract. Thus, Thanos now has two, because he already went to Xandar and got the Power Stone. So, Loki then dies, Thanos strangles him, and I'd like to think that that means maybe he's dead for real, because since he got choked to death it couldn't have been an illusion. But then we also saw an illusion of him get stabbed and act like he died in the Thor the Dark World. So I'm not really sure. They really do hammer it in with a few lines that he's really dead this time. But I don't know. I think the Tumblr fangirls for Tom Hiddleston will demand his return. So I guess we will just have to wait and see. So then on Earth, we get sort of the first grouping, which is Doctor Strange finds Bruce Banner, and him and Wong, they recruit Iron Man, and then basically two of Thanos' children, they come to get the Time Stone from Doctor Strange, and the other two go to get the Mind Stone from Vision. So there's a few fights in there that are pretty entertaining. Spider-Man shows up to help Iron Man, and just the vibe that I got from these battles that I really liked is that even though I didn't know if any characters were going to die right at the start, it was still, there was that fear that anyone could die at any minute, and it's something that I realized was really missing from a lot of the other battles in the other movies. So I do really like that this movie gave that vibe where it was anyone's game, anyone could live or die, and it added an extra layer of intensity to the fight sequences. So that's pretty good that this film achieved that. There is one thing where I don't know if you'd consider this a plot hole or not, but we see that Wong, he teleports the big axe child of Thanos. I know they all have names, I don't know all of them. And he teleports him, and this axe monster tries to come back through the portal, and Wong closes it off on the monster's hand, thus severing it. And I thought, okay, I want to at least see them try to use that attack on Thanos to see if they can get the Infinity Gauntlet off. They never did. I'm not sure if that strategy would have worked, but I don't know. That was just a thing I thought maybe they could have tried at the very least. Just finding some way to devise that strategy just to get the gauntlet off. But you know, in any case, Ebony Maw, aka Squidward, captures Doctor Strange, and they go off on the big donut ship while Iron Man and Spider-Man stow away. And this leads to one of my favorite scenes in the film. I have to bring up Alien all the time because I love it so much, and you know, this film gave me the perfect opportunity because they brought up aliens for me. So basically, Spider-Man, he devises this strategy to free Doctor Strange and kill Ebony Maw, as he says, "Did you ever see that really old movie Aliens?" So then they shoot open a part of the ship to blow Ebony out of the airlock, and then they save Doctor Strange from getting sucked out as well. And I thought it was a great scene, just because it was very similar to Spider-Man's moment in Civil War with, "Did you ever see that really old movie Empire Strikes Back?" And that felt very in line with Tom Holland's portrayal of Spider-Man. But my favorite part, and that was that the shot of Squidward flying out the airlock, or the hole that they blew up in the ship, that shot is the exact same shot as the Queen Alien flying out of the Sulaco at the end of Aliens. And just for the fact that they, not only did they reference it, but that they used the exact same shot. I thought that was hilarious that they fully committed to that reference. So I thought it was pretty cool that they managed to do that. So it's a nice moment. And so then basically, two of Thanos' children, the other two, they fail to get the Mind Stone from Vision. So Captain America, Black Widow, Falcon, Vision, Scarlet Witch, they all go to Wakanda to try to devise some kind of strategy of removing the Mind Stone without killing Vision. They also get Bruce Banner and War Machine. And so they're doing that. There's a big battle going on in Wakanda, with them sending out these like kind of weird, like they're kind of like bug type monsters, but the head kind of makes me think of a xenomorph, but they also have 4 arms, and there's a big battle going on there. Doctor Strange and Spider-Man and Iron Man decide that they want to fight Thanos on his home planet rather than on Earth because of all the potential collateral damage. And then Thor gets rescued by the Guardians of the Galaxy, and they split up with half of them going to try and stop Thanos from getting the Reality Stone, while Thor, Rocket, and Groot go to forge a new weapon for Thor to kill Thanos. So they're all kind of split up over different parts, and it was kind of good because then it allows there to be a bit of spacing between all the characters and to focus on specific interactions. I liked how the second that the Guardians start, sort of overpraising Thor for his godliness, that Star-Lord gets very insecure about it and starts all preaching around. He even tries to put his voice into a bit of a deeperness, and he's not mocking him, it's his natural voice. So that moment was really great. And then Thor, he has a really great moment with Rocket. I sort of touched on it earlier with him basically explaining that he may as well fight Thanos because he's pretty much lost everything. And then Rocket, in a nice moment of him trying to be a leader, a captain, he pulls out this old eye that he has and gives it to Thor. And some might say that it makes him losing his eye and having the eye patch in Thor Ragnarok a little inconsequential. But I like this because it was Rocket finding a way to, just give him a little hope, a little inspiration, and doing something nice for him because he was really starting to care about Thor and his struggles. And so that was a nice gesture from him, I felt. So they go to, I'm not sure how you say it, Nidavellir, or something or other like that, but basically where they're going to forge a weapon for Thor, and the only one left is, of these forgers, the dwarves, is played by Peter Dinklage, and it's Peter Dinklage playing a dwarf, but he's like twice the height of everyone, and so just for the imagery alone of him being so much taller than everyone, that was pretty hilarious. A very, very funny joke. And so they forge the weapon for Thor, which is Stormbreaker. Groot has a nice moment where he cuts off part of his arm to serve as the handle for Stormbreaker. So that's all a really great sequence. The rest of the Guardians, they go to stop Thanos from getting the Reality Stone, but they fail. And then this brings me to something I'm not really sure of, but when I was doing my rewatching marathon, I rewatched Thor: The Dark World, which is the one mainly featuring the Ether, the Reality Stone. And I'm not exactly sure how this one's supposed to work, because like in the Dark World, the main thing is that, like, if anyone tries to attack Jane, it, like, sends an energy blast out from them. And then when Malekith uses it, he's, like, summoning all these tendrils from him, and it makes him really strong. And then they defeat him by just crushing him with a giant spaceship. And then they're able to secure the ether. But in this one, Thanos uses the Reality Stone to, like, make illusions that, like, the base that they're in, nowhere is actually okay when it's actually been destroyed. He uses it to, like, turn Drax into blocks and Mantis into, like, I don't know, she gets kind of, like, slinkied. And he turns weapons into bubbles, and then later on he turns the spaceship into a bunch of bats. So that more seems in line with what I would picture a Reality Stone would do. But I'm not exactly certain. There's probably, like, some kind of nerdy answer to it that I just don't know about, because I don't really read much of these comic books, unfortunately. So that kind of brings me to another point that I guess is a bit of a criticism, but I know it's something that's very difficult to handle in film. And that's, I feel all these characters don't really use some of their powers to the fullest ability they could. Like in Doctor Strange, we see that he's able to, like, trap Dormammu in this, like, locked time state. And so then he basically keeps on sacrificing himself and reversing the time again just to lock him in there. And just other situations like that, I feel he never really uses the time stone, though Thanos does address that he probably should have used it. We'll get to that in a bit with sort of the ending. And then the Power Stone, like, remember we saw that it had the power to just destroy an entire planet in a single hit, and then this one doesn't really seem to be as powerful. Or maybe Thanos could have just turned them all into bats and dematerialized them or something. I'm not sure. It's hard to balance it properly when you have all these insane powers and trying to figure out ways for these characters to fight each other while making it seem fair. But with that sort of aside, I do think all the fights were very entertaining and creative, and everyone had a hero moment, a really stand up and cheer moment. And it's very difficult to be able to do that when you have so many main characters in a film, so I'll give the film props for at least making it good and entertaining. A lesser film would have failed on that aspect, and this one didn't. So Thanos manages to capture Gamora, and he forces her to tell him where the last stone is, the Soul Stone. And when they go to the planet where it's hidden, the Red Skull, he's there, and he's the new guardian of the Soul Stone. And it makes zero sense as to why he suddenly has all this knowledge. I guess it makes sense that he got teleported there from the end of the first Avenger, but in any case, he has a pretty sweet cameo there, so that was cool. And then Thanos then has to sacrifice Gamora to be able to be given the stone. And that was a pretty emotional scene as well. The thing I'm wondering, I don't know if it is part of it, but my mind was that maybe Thanos always knew that that was kind of some challenge he might have to overcome, and thus he's been raising Gamora and learning to love her so that he would eventually learn to give up something. But perhaps that's my theory, because I don't want to see him in a sympathetic light, because I just really hate him, but like in a good hate the villain sort of way. So that was a really great sequence. It does bring me to one interesting point, and that is that there's at least 2 or 3 times in the film where somebody knows where a stone is, and Thanos threatens to kill someone that the person cares about. and then they say, okay, fine, I'll tell you where the stone is. They do that with Loki and the Tesseract, with Gamora and the Soul Stone, and with Doctor Strange and the Time Stone. But to be fair, even though it does repeat that same beat 3 times, I feel that it works in each sequence, because for Loki, it shows that no matter what, he still does care about Thor and doesn't want him to die in such a way. Gamora, I could see her caving if she wants to save Nebula, especially with what they went through together in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And Doctor Strange caving in is one thing that some people have debated. First of all, I'll say that I liked that they didn't make him cave in when he had all of the acupuncture torture earlier in the film with Squidward, because my first thought was, okay, he spent his last movie being like smashed and crushed and stabbed by some god-dimensional monster beast, and he didn't give in, and you're gonna tell me that a few needles make him give in, but they didn't, so that's good. And then his whole thing before the battle is that he goes forward in time and sees like 14 million possible outcomes of the scenario, and that there's only one where they win. And all of a sudden he decides to just give Thanos the Time Stone so that Iron Man doesn't die, despite him saying that he would not hesitate to let Iron Man or Spider-Man die. So pretty much the entire internet sort of agrees that this is part of his plan to eventually lead to them defeating Thanos. I guess we'll see in the next movie. But that didn't seem so out of character. After Thanos gets the Soul Stone, he goes back to Titan. There's a big fight with him, the Guardians, Iron Man, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange. And then during that fight, they almost managed to get the gauntlet off of him. But Star-Lord, he messes it up because he lets his anger get the better of him. And this is another scene where I was okay with, because he's always been a very hot-headed character. We've seen this in the other 2 Guardians movies and earlier in Infinity War as well, where for no reason he just starts mocking Thor just because he feels that Gamora might have the hots for him. So I was okay with him all of a sudden reacting on emotion, and that is the thing. Looking back, I've seen the film twice now, and it's almost kind of sad because you can see the exact moment where each character makes a screw up, thus leading to Thanos winning. And everyone pretty much has a screw up moment. And so it is kind of sad because watching the film the second time, I'm just there like, no, don't. You're so close. Don't do it. No, please. So I like that. It's a similar vibe I get to other films where I know they don't have happy endings, and that's good. I like that. And then Thanos manages to defeat them. I thought for sure though that Iron Man was gonna die. Pretty much everyone thought he was, but nope, he just gets stabbed, and then he manages to heal himself. And Thanos goes to Earth. Thor's shown up. He has this really awesome Stormbreaker moment. That was great. But he manages to get to Vision, and it's a pretty heart-wrenching scene. Like, Scarlet Witch has to kill Vision, and she does, and thus destroys the Mind Gem. And then I was thinking, okay, Thanos has the Time Stone, he better use it and just, rewind time, which he does. So again, I'll give the movie credit. Okay, you did the right thing. And then he rewinds time and then kills Vision a second time, and then he gets all the stones. And then Thor, he throws Stormbreaker at them, at Thanos, stabs him, and then you think that he might have beaten him, but Thanos still has enough energy in him to snap his fingers. and then he has a vision where I guess he's inside the pocket universe inside the Soul Stone, where he's talking to a young Gamora, and he admits that what did accomplishing his goal cost him? It cost him everything. And then back in reality, he escapes, and everyone starts disintegrating into dust. Which is why there's all the disintegration memes now. And before I get to that, I'll just talk about Thanos as a character and his plan. His general idea is sort of from this realist perspective that he wants to kill off half the population so that the other half can survive on the limited resources and thus build himself up again. This kind of sort of controlled population scheme. Kind of remind me similar to the idea of the Reapers in Mass Effect, the way that they have to allow life to evolve and only sort of wipe it out. You know, you don't want to kill it off, but if you let it go unchecked, it will eventually kill itself off. So that was an interesting perspective, and many have pointed out that his plan is very flawed and he could have many other solutions, but I think that is kind of the point. Like, he's the villain of the film. Generally, with villains, not all the time, but generally, we're not supposed to agree with the villain. We're supposed to not agree with him because he's the villain. We're supposed to side with the heroes or the protagonist. And so the fact that he has flawed logic, but he's so convinced that it's correct, sort of goes along with it. It was like, yeah, he thinks what he's doing is right. He's clearly wrong, but he's so caught up in his own mind game that he can't see it. And that's why the heroes have to stop him, because they're not going to be able to just politely ask him to stop or have some kind of political debate. They're going to have to do it with fisticuffs, the old-fashioned way. So, I liked him as a character, though. It's kind of funny, the fact that he's sort of all depressed, like, this is my destiny and I must do this and nobody else can do it except for me. That kind of, like, attitude made me almost, like, hate him and want him to lose even more because of how self-righteous he thinks he is. And so what I want in part 2, I want them to get the gauntlet, use the time stone, save everyone, and then I want Nebula to kill Thanos, and then I want them to use the time stone and bring it back to life, and then have Thor kill Thanos, and then I want the big money shot where you see all of the characters in one shot to be them basically lining up to take turns getting revenge on Thanos for everything he's done. Brutal, yes. Overkill, yes, but awesome. Absolutely, you know it. So, I just want it on record that I thought of that idea, if they do use it in the film. It's all me. It's all my thing. Now, the sequence at the end where everyone turns to dust, I love the way they handled it. It was a very emotional sequence, with everyone sort of getting their last moment in. Particularly Spider-Man. I don't know if it was intentional that he quoted David Tennant's doctor from Doctor Who with his line, "I don't want to go." But in any case, it was a pretty sad moment. And some people have argued that this sequence is a little undercut by the fact that we know many of these characters might come back for sequel films and other things like that. But I look at it in terms of the moment itself and the way it was handled, and it was done very well in a very emotional way. And I will give the film credit that it ended with these characters still dead. They didn't pull some miracle at the last second so that it had a happy ending. It ended that way. There was sort of this hushed silence in the theater after it ended. Everyone sort of sat back, kind of like, wow, where do we go from here? It's a comparison that everyone compares everything to The Empire Strikes Back, but this definitely had that sort of same vibe of, man, we lost, like, what do we do now? So, I liked that a lot. There have been many other films where, you know, they'll, including Marvel's own films, where they'll have a big dramatic death and kill off a character, but then before the credits roll, or just after, that character will be alive, and that's when the death feels really undercut. You can't walk away from the experience of the film with that death being impactful, but you can in this case. So regardless of the fact of whether all these characters are saved, I still think that that moment was really great. And it was interesting that it ended on that last shot of Thanos, similar to as you would with your hero at the end of a film. So, do you think it was a very bold move on this film's part? And regardless of whether or not these characters all come back in part 2, I still like that they did it that way. I also like how there's no mid-credit scene. There's kind of like that pause where you expect it to happen, and then it doesn't. And then so you're just sort of there like, oh, wow, I just feel empty inside. There is one at the very end where you see Nick Fury and Maria Hill start to fade away as well. And at the last second, Nick Fury manages to activate this really old-looking pager. And I do like that, of course, this is what would happen in real life if Samuel L. Jackson was in the same spot. If he was fading away, you know that the last thing he'd say would be, motherfucker. And so on his pager, you see the Captain Marvel logo, thus signifying that he was singling her for help. And we'll probably get more info about how that all works in the next upcoming films. So, I think that's about all I have really to say. Again, maybe some of the battles could have been more crazy with some of the powers, but might be asking a little too much. I do felt that most of the characters were in line with what they expected. I liked the way everything has evolved to this point. It is a very entertaining movie, both from a comedy, action, and dramatic perspective, and just the fact that it manages to, like, shift through all these different moods so effortlessly with all the tonal changes. So yeah, it's a really great one. I do think it has been worth the wait. You've probably already seen it, so good, go see it again if you'd like. I'm really hoping that it has a good payoff, though, in the second Infinity War movie. It's going to kind of be hard to judge that element of it, of course, until that film comes out, and we will see that then. But, last thing, a little teaser. There's a certain project I've been working on, and a certain video that I'm in the editing process right now. There's no telling how long it's going to be, but it involves this.